Hey guys, it's Rita here with Empowerment and All That. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast. I want to let you know that I'm actually using Anchor as the easiest way to make this podcast. Anchor actually gives me everything that I need all in one place for free, which I can use right from my phone or my computer. The creation tools allow for me to record and edit my podcast so it sounds fabulous. Best part about it, though, is that they distribute it for me so I can be heard anywhere from Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and so many more. Want to know a secret? You can actually make money from this podcast with no minimum listenership. Download the Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. Now back to the show. Hey guys, it's Rita here with Empowerment and All That, your podcast to deliver diverse stories of empowerment. For today's episode, I interview Seth and Ashleigh Russell, both ex-college athletes who've endured injuries, surgeries, and recovery.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you guys for giving me time and, joining me on my podcast. So, I want you guys to give me a little background on yourselves. Tell me where you're from, when you got it started in sports, and we'll go from there.
Okay. So I grew up in Spring, Texas, so just about 45 minutes outside of Houston. Mm-hmm. I started playing soccer a little later because I know you can start when you're 4, but I was into the gymnastics, cheerleading kind of thing. But then I saw my brother playing soccer and I wanted to be like him. Mm-hmm. So my parents signed me up and I played till I was 21. So
wow.
Yep.
21. Yep. So how did you get started in football?
Football was kind of a second or third tertiary sport.
Okay.
I originally grew up playing baseball and basketball just with my brothers. I have 3 brothers, 2 older and 1 younger. Mm-hmm. The 2 oldest played every sport possible, and so I just kind of wanted to follow into their footsteps, and we were constantly, really competitive. And so, growing up, going to high school, seeing where the next level was going to be, football was kind of the calling card out of all of it, and so I really focused on that. And then got the opportunity to go to Baylor to play a little bit of D1 football.
That's awesome. So Texas is really big on high school sports, right? So where did you guys go to school?
So I went to Klein Collins in Spring, and I played for a Challenge Soccer Club.
And I went to Garland High School in good old G-Town.
G-Town.
Yeah.
So you guys got scouts that started coming to look for you. Like, how did you get into Baylor? Did you go on scholarship? Like, what was that experience like?
Mm-hmm. So I actually signed to Baylor as a sophomore in high school, so it was really early. I was the first one on my soccer team, but I just knew that's where I wanted to go, and it kind of took the stress of college applications and, going through that whole recruiting process, which I did to a certain degree, but just not as extensively, because typically you're not committing till you're late into your junior year. Yeah. But I just knew Baylor was the school for me. I visited, it was beautiful, the coaches were awesome, and it was centered around everything that I wanted. So it was kind of a shoo-in, and I just picked it and went forth. Yeah.
Yeah, my journey was a little different. I wasn't as fortunate to sign in my sophomore year.
You weren't as awesome as
I wasn't
she
as
was
awesome,
at first.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I, going into my senior season, I was originally committed to the University of Kansas to play football there. Then went through my entire senior season. At the end of the season, they ended up firing all the coaching staff at Kansas. Mm-hmm. And so that really kind of opened up my recruitment again, unfortunately. But fortunately, I still kept some good contacts with other colleges just in case, having the kind of backup plan. Mm-hmm. And Coach Montgomery at Baylor, who was the quarterback coach at the time in OC, I reached back out to him. I was like, hey, do y'all have any opportunities open? Do y'all have any scholarships, anything? I mean, I'm open. And he said, not right now. We had this guy named Robert Griffin III, otherwise known as RG3.
Little RG,
yeah,
no big.
He was going into his senior season, and so they had all their spots filled, but he fortunately a week later ended up committing to the draft, and then that kind of opened up another spot, and I went and visited. Loved Browse and their regime and the whole university. I mean, just like her, the campus is beautiful. I love their style of play, and so I ended up committing there and having a great time.
Oh, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. So fast forward, you're sitting in practice, right? What was it where you see this beautiful blonde hair injured
He loves telling
soccer
this story.
athlete that walks in? So tell us a little bit about how you guys met.
Yeah, so freshman year, before our fall schedule of school and sports started, we had to take an etiquette class, and that was for all the freshman athletes that were coming in that year. So we were at the football facility in our team room, which is kind of like a theater seating. The aisles go down the sides, and you enter into the back. Us being freshmen, they were saying athletes always sit at the front because you want to set a good example with the teachers and whatnot.
Right.
That
doesn't ever happen.
It doesn't, but
they're always lying in the back row. Let's be real.
That's what they
that
want you to
happened
do.
the first week.
Yeah, and so I'm sitting in the front row. I'm probably about 2 or 3 seats in from the end, and class is about to start, and then I hear the door open and it shuts, and you start hearing this guy coming down the aisleway, and I was kind of like, "What's that weird noise?" Somebody crutching on some crutches. And then Ashley kind of crutches to the front and kind of looks down the row like, somebody better get up because I need to sit here.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Because
I wasn't going to go between the 2 seats.
Yeah.
Like, there was no way.
Because she was recovering. She had an ACL surgery, and so she was in the crutches and everything. And so I got up and gave her my seat, and I moved to the back. And so that kind of sparked a little bit of interest, I guess, in both of our minds. And then later on, we eventually kind of hung out, and then here we are today.
Here we are, married and in love.
That's right.
Absolutely.
So give the girl your seat.
Oh, yeah. Always. For here on out, you're giving her your seat. Right?
That's the trick.
So you get injured. This is your first year before you even start playing, right? So you come to school already injured, or how does that work?
I came to school injured, so I actually tore my ACL the last game of my club soccer career before I went to college.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Last game, second half, the end of everything, and then completely tore it. So I remember having to have that conversation with my college coach, like calling her, kind of feeling like, oh, they're not going to want me anymore, but lucky because they already signed me, so it was already a done deal. But yeah, so I came in injured, had surgery, I think 2 weeks before I moved up to college, because we had to take the second summer session just so you could get ahead on your classes since we both have fall sports. But yeah, so came in injured and had to rehab the first 8 to 9 months.
Wow.
So I missed that first season and redshirted.
Wow. So were you able then to play the additional 3 years? I mean, tell me a little bit more about that because I'm not too familiar with the red shirt process, right?
Right. So it should give you an additional 4 years of eligibility. So what happened with me is I came in injured, rehabbed for that first 9 months. It was in spring season, which is our off season, that I started practicing again with the team. And then my first practice back at full contact, I tore my ACL again, the same one.
Whew.
That was horrible.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and it was just, it was pretty bad. But so I immediately went straight into rehabbing again for another 9 months, maybe even more than that, because they were so nervous about me because it was the same knee, and I don't know, I think they just didn't want me to go back and do it a third time, and I don't know. But, so yeah, got hurt back to back. So I didn't actually play until I was a junior school-wise. Wow. And I opted to just play that junior season and then my senior season, because my senior season I got hurt again. More of a minor knee surgery, but still a surgery. And I was like, this is 3 from 18 to 20. I think this is a lot. I want to be able to walk when I'm older. Yeah. So I just decided to stop there because I knew I wanted to go to grad school and I had education aspirations that I wanted to pursue versus staying and playing longer.
And so what is your actual profession now? So
I am a registered dietitian at a children's hospital in Houston.
Awesome. And was that what your dream job was? Is that what you wanted to do? Is that why you ended up wanting to quit sports and go into dietitian?
Right. I think I've always had an interest in nutrition just because that's such a big focus being an athlete, your nutrition is key. I didn't necessarily see myself as being a inpatient clinical dietitian per se, but you go through your master's program, you go through an internship program where you're exposed to all those different areas. And I think after you work with adults, you realize that that's not what you want to do, at least from a dietitian standpoint, because they don't listen to you. Like, they're set in their ways. And with kids, you can mold their brains, and they're just fun. Like, it's just a fun environment to go into every single day.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Most people don't want to work with adults anyway.
I know. That's true. But if you have to tell them what to do, it's even worse.
Right.
Especially when it comes to food.
Exactly. Because at this point, we've had a chance to taste everything.
I know it. I know.
Well, so you guys meet in college, right? And so while you were going through all these injuries, then you're also meeting Seth, right? Star quarterback. Right. Quarterback.
No, not at the time. I didn't know he was the quarterback at the time. He was the third string quarterback. Yeah, third string. I didn't care about that. And I think that's why...
Secretly, all women do. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, I think that's part of the reason why we were able to be so strong and consistent to each other, because I don't know. Some girls have ill intentions when it comes to football players. Like, they want the star athlete and things like that, but that wasn't my situation.
Yet.
No. Oh, yeah, I kept you around because you ended up being good.
Until he got better, and then...
No. I mean, that was a plus, but no, that's not the reason why. But yeah, he was like third string quarterback when I met him. Didn't know he was a quarterback, so it was kind of like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
But
So how do you go from third string quarterback to where you're actually getting plays on the field and you're growing some popularity?
It's definitely a learning process. With our system, it's pretty easy. It was pretty easy to pick up, but it was executing it at a high level, which with the guys that were in front of me, like I mentioned, Robert Griffin III, you had a kid named Nick Florence that came after him, Bryce Petty, who got drafted in the 4th round, and then me. And so it's kind of like you look up to those guys where you think you can beat them out, which, I mean, I felt like I could have, but it was like waiting your turn. Coach Bryles, he was big on waiting your turn, learning from the guys in front of you and gaining experience while watching, through their downfalls and their upsides, and learning through that, and then really trying to take advantage of the opportunities when you do get them. But, for the most part, it was tough for me because I was a competitor and I still am. And at that point, whenever I'm a freshman and sophomore, I'm thinking to myself, I should be the one out there, like, starting. Like, I should be the one, going through the plays, like, leading the team to championships. But then on the flip side, it's like, I'm glad I wasn't, because if it didn't happen that way, I mean, I'm completely, content in myself. Like, if it were, hell were to freeze over, like, I would take the blame for it. Like, that's just that type of guy that I am. And watching those guys, how they were able to succeed and be able to learn from their, like, their positives, and being able to be a part of a championship team and see the older guys kind of go through, their processes of learning and them kind of doing what they did, and then me step in and be able to be successful in the system as well. I think it was just a great learning process in total.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome that you talk about that experience of, like, learning from the person in front of you and waiting your turn. I think too many people nowadays are trying to rush through everything, and they want to be the front man without having any skill or understanding whatsoever, as opposed to actually giving themselves the time to mature and get better in their skill across the board with everything, right? So,
yeah.
You kind of relate it to day-to-day life now as an adult.
Yeah,
going into the profession thinking, why am I not making that much money? Like, I want to be doing that, but it's just a process. So.
I mean, I know I should be making millions of dollars already,
but...
Yeah, of course. I'm with you.
Right. So, all right, so now you're playing, right? And then all of a sudden, so your first injury, pretty huge injury, right? So tell us a little bit about what was going on, what happened.
Yeah,
Give us the rundown on that.
Yeah, so we were, I think, like, ranked 4th or 3rd in the nation, and just by football standings. We were running through teams, like, we were putting up, video game numbers is what they would call it.
And this is your first year as a starter.
First year as a starter.
Yeah.
And so we're putting up, like, these numbers that are unheard of, even in previous years at Baylor. I mean, I was in the running I was like the head guy in the lead for the Heisman Trophy that year. Everything was just going the way that it needed to go, like from all the hard work and dedication that all the players have put in. And then it comes down to we're at homecoming, and it's a big tradition at Baylor. Like I think it was one of the original colleges.
Bonfires?
Yeah, original
right.
colleges to like actually do a homecoming or a bonfire. And there's 5 minutes left in the game. We're up by at least 2 touchdowns, and there's no reason why I shouldn't have just handed the ball off. But I was, not thinking in my right mind. I pulled the ball, which is on the zone read, like you have the option to pull it or hand it off. So I pulled it, and I'm running. I'm thinking I'm going to get a first down, and a guy comes up and hits me kind of like my head is kind of like down at an angle and just basically like kind of crunches it to the side. I kind of sat there for a minute because I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what was wrong. I mean, I didn't have any kind of paralysis or any kind of tingling or anything going throughout my body. But as I got up to start walking to get to the next play, because I'm thinking, okay, we're just shake it off, move on to the next play. Like, I start trying to walk to the right, and my body will only walk to the left. It was the weirdest feeling in my entire life that I've ever been in. And, like, I didn't know how to handle it. And so I looked over to the sideline. I called a timeout, and I knew that, all the eyes were going to be on me because it was just like that's just the way the cameras work. They're always looking at the quarterback. And so I would use the yard marker on the field and stare at that as I was walking, so I knew I was walking in a straight line. Like, if I wasn't, I would have easily been walking to the left. And I walked slowly, too. But as I got to the sideline, I was talking, everybody was ready to go. I'm still in my head, like, what's going on? Like, I'm not freaking out, but I'm just kind of like, I don't know what's going on. And so I tell Coach, I was like, I can't go. And everybody like paused and looked at me like, what are you talking about? You can't go. I said, I can't go. And so everybody kind of paused for a little bit longer. It was like, okay, whoever the second string go in, whatever.
I probably never heard that out of your mouth before.
Yeah, and that's just not the type of guy I was. Like, I was going to fight through. I mean, I fight through everything, like, just because that's who I am.
Yeah.
So I go to the sideline and start getting evaluated. Then game ends. I go to the hospital, get x-rays, ends up I have a complete fracture through my facet joint on the right side of my C6 vertebrae.
So in layman's terms, that's you broke
Broke
your
his neck.
I broke my neck, basically, and I shouldn't have been walking.
Jeez.
Like, there's no reason. God has some kind of divine intervention in that where the way that it broke and how all the ligaments that were torn in there, that why did I walk off? I don't know, but I was able to, and I kind of used that as fire because once I kind of got injured and started going through after surgery, going through the rehab process, I was getting messages from people all around the country and all around the world, like sending me pictures of their kids saying, my kid did the same thing you did, but he's in a wheelchair. And so it's just kind of like, it kind of sparks that type of, I guess, emotion or whatever in you that's like, okay, I'm going to fight through this. Like, I have this opportunity to go back on the field and prove that even though somebody has broken their neck, they can make it to the next level. And that was my mentality going through all of it.
Wow. So that's got to be the scariest thing, to find out that you broke your neck. But I'm wondering, like, you're obviously watching these games while he's playing and everything, and all of a sudden you're watching the game and something's wrong. Like, what is going through your mind, and how are you feeling at this moment when something's not right?
Right. I mean, I think I was high-strung to begin with in every single football game. I think every single time Seth was up to play, I'd like hold my breath because the quarterback gets blamed for everything. And so, and I get all defensive because you hear people in the stands like saying like, oh, Seth, you suck. And I don't know, I'd always get really defensive. So I was on edge per usual, but I think, I mean, when anybody gets hurt on the field, you obviously have that sense of panic, but especially being Seth. Knowing how well he was doing and knowing his dreams and his aspirations of playing in the NFL. That's the first thing that goes through your brain. Obviously his health as well, but from what it looked like being in the stands, it looked like they were treating him for a concussion. And I know that shouldn't be a normal thing, but it just kind of is. I mean, I played soccer. I've been headed in the head numerous times, kicked in the head numerous times. Like, I've had concussions myself. Like, football's a contact sport. You just expect it. And so I was thinking it was more so a concussion, and that's kind of the protocol it looked like was being followed on the field. But I think I realized something was really wrong when we were actually called down from the stands to go on the field and then go under into the stadium because something was really wrong with him and they were going to send him to the hospital. So it was scary. I was crying. His mom was crying. Like, there was just a bunch of things. Like, we obviously didn't know his neck was broken. I don't think we knew your neck was broken at the stadium. We didn't know until we went over to the hospital. But just, like, seeing Seth, like, I've seen him cry, like, 2 times maybe in a lifetime, and that was probably one of them. And just seeing, like, how somber he was, just looking at him, like, that wasn't my Seth, right? Like, that wasn't my happy-go-lucky Seth. Like, so I knew something was up, and I think that was the scariest part. Makes me kind of teary-eyed thinking about it.
Oh, y'all, I feel like I want to cry just listening to this story. Like, so when you're in the hospital and they tell you all this, and then you find out, okay, you have to undergo surgery, how long did they tell you the rehab process was going to be and how long all this was going to take for you to get back onto the field?
Yeah, so I initially went up to Dallas because I was supposed there was a guy up there that was the guru of neck surgeries and blah, 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 whatever. Went up there and just didn't have a good experience with him. And that kind of go back to the story of, you know, God really puts people in places. You don't know why they put them there or why so far across the country, whatever it was. But my brother, he's an orthopedic surgeon, and he got his residency at the University of West Virginia, which was a hospital that is the partner with the University of West Virginia. And so he started doing a bunch of research on who are the best surgeons in the country to do this, and it ended up being there was only 3 of them that were at the top of the list. There was one in Florida, there was one I think in like California, and there was one at the hospital he was at, which was just the craziest thing to think of, like, just in retrospect of like how many physicians in the country, let alone the world, and one of them is at the same hospital that he's at. And so I ended up making a trip up there, went through the full process, of possible opportunities, what can we do, what are some of the steps, and by the book, they told me that it was a double level fusion. So that would have been C5, C6, and C7 would have all been fused together, which that basically shut out any opportunity to play football ever again, just from the risks that it would take of the forces and whatnot on each of the other joints. Ended up doing a single level fusion. Everything worked out the way it was supposed to perfectly. Everything healed properly.
Jeez.
By the grace of God. And it was a really interesting process just to kind of go through it. But once everything kind of got over the hump, it was really starting to get back to that mindset of, okay, here's another opportunity. Like, not many people get a second chance, and this was a second chance of going back and playing the game that I loved.
That's pretty intense to say, I just broke my neck and I'm thinking about getting back on the field again.
Yeah.
So what was something that really, I mean, you mentioned, your belief in God, right? Mm-hmm. What was something that really continued to help you ground yourself and empower you through this injury?
Yeah, I think it was just going back to that of the overwhelming support from Baylor Nation, from anybody that followed collegiate football. I mean, doctors, families, anybody that knew anything about football. Like, I mean, unfortunately, the neck was like big news of, Baylor quarterback, Heisman front runner breaks his neck. Like, what's next type of deal. And there was always kind of like a following of what was going to be next with that. And just really seeing, Coach Browse, one of his big sayings was go out and prove yourself every day. Because, like, he's a guy that's, blue collar, doesn't want anything handed to him. And he really instilled that in me in the standpoint of, you're not going to get this opportunity again. Like, if you fail it, like, that's on you. Like, you need to make the best of it. And so I really kind of took that to heart and really started to work harder, push myself to the limits of, like, in the weight room, I would do neck exercises.
Jeez.
And like I would do it where you have these big kind of rubber band type deals.
Yeah.
And I would put it to the top of the weight machine, and I would just tie it around the side of my head, and I would just lay in like free weight basically, and just hold myself up with my neck just to strengthen it. And yeah, and my strength coaches, whenever they saw me doing it, they freaked out because they're like, "What are you doing? Like, you're not supposed to be doing this." I'm like, "Just back off. Like, I got this. Like, I know I can."
Yeah.
Like, I trust myself. Like, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna be, ignorant in this situation. But it was that's what kind of kept pushing me is, the guys around me, they were working hard. So I was like, I'm not gonna pity myself. Like, I want to be out there with those guys. I want to get back on the field, whatever that takes. And I just kept pushing myself and using that as motivation.
That's awesome. Now, is there any point while he's doing these neck exercises that you're like, maybe this isn't a good idea, maybe you should probably take a little bit more time? Or were you just like gung-ho the entire time, like, this is a great idea, just keep moving because you knew how much he cared about it?
I mean, from a rehab standpoint, I definitely wanted him to rehab it because whether or not his choice was to go back to football or just go back to life, like, that obviously needs to be mended. I was impartial because I feel like you can't tell someone whose dream their whole life has been to play at the next level, like, don't try. Like, my one thing that I remember always telling Seth was, like, if you are going to be 100% safe going back on the football field, I'm okay with it. But if there's a chance that you're more prone to breaking your neck now because of your neck injury, I won't be okay with it. I remember having those conversations. That was so long ago.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people thought that was crazy. Like, I remember many people telling me, because Waco's such a small town, and it was even such a smaller town before all this Magnolia stuff came to. That wasn't a thing until the very end of our Baylor experience. But, like, people at restaurants would say things like, why are you letting him play? Or, like, just, like, to, like, his mom and to me, and just making rude comments. Like, oh, if this was my son, if this was my boyfriend, like, I wouldn't do this. And it's like, well, you are not in this situation. But I think you hear both sides. But at the end of the day, the only person who can make that decision is Seth. And so he respected the fact that I said, if you're not 100% safe, I don't want you playing. I don't know if he'd listen to me if he was told that he wasn't 100% safe to play. But that was always something that I made known when we would have these discussions, which would be frequent, because his neck rehab wasn't that intense from what I understand. It was more so just healing of the bone and then getting your muscles stronger. And it was like 6 months. Like, it wasn't, and that seems like a long time, but, like, in the rehab realm of things, I feel like sometimes it takes years a year to rehab something. Right. And so it wasn't that bad of, like, a rehab recovery, but I think, like, right after the surgery, seeing how in pain he was kind of like, oh gosh, there's no way he's ever going to be back on a football field. He was so mean after surgery. I think he's never been meaner to me in my life, and it was such a kind gesture on my part.
She's like, I'm literally letting you play.
No, I will never let him
face.
Forget this. So I flew to West Virginia because that's just something you're not going to forget. I mean, by this point, we'd been dating for 2.5 to 3 years. It was already, we talked about marriage, things like that. We hadn't gotten engaged yet, but it was obviously something that we were planning to do in the future. So flew to West Virginia, was there for that whole 8-hour surgery. And then when he came back, he was staying in a hotel. And, like, one night we decided to go over to his brother's house because they were living in West Virginia at the time. Still are. They're about to move back, though. But it was Halloween time. And so they have 2 children. So there's, like, candy at the house. And I'm like, wow, there's a Reese's peanut butter cup. Seth really loves that candy. So he's just, like, sitting on a couch. Like, we're all just bringing food to him, or we're just congregating in the kitchen because he's just in pain, will not talk to anyone. And I'm like, I think I can break him. Like, there has to be a way. So
not literally.
break him as in
Not again.
as in
Just
your
kidding.
mood, breaking your mood because you just were not happy. You were obviously in pain and were on a ton of pain medication. But I was just going over, like, trying to give him a piece of candy, like, being goofy, and he wouldn't talk to me. Like, it was the weirdest thing. Like, I knew he could speak. We had spoken before, but he was just in so much pain. He wouldn't talk to me. I remember went and cried and had to tell myself, like, Ashleigh, he's just in a lot of pain. Like, it's not something you did. Like, but I was so upset because I'm kind of like, Seth, just say a word. Like, say no thanks or no or something like that. But he just would not speak. But back to your question. So I felt at the end of the day, it was Seth's decision. I told him, I will be supportive of what you do. This is what I want out of the situation, knowing that you're going to be 100% healthy going back because we can't go through this again because you may not get so lucky next time around.
Interestingly enough, you get back on the field and you're playing, fully recovered, neck injury is fully healed. Yeah. And then what happens?
Another turn of events, I guess. Unfortunate turn of events. So we're playing Oklahoma. I think we may have lost 1 or 2 games by this time, but we're still in the running for, possibly a Big 12 championship to national championship. I'm just kind of like everybody is. It's middle of the season. We're at Oklahoma, and it's the third quarter. We're driving down. It was a 3rd and long. Again, another 3rd down. And I end up scrambling up the middle, and I kind of went to spin to my left. And as I spun, a guy, outside linebacker or safety or somebody had kind of cracked down and went low. And as they went low, I was twisting, and my foot stayed in place, and everything else twisted with my body. And if you want to look it up on YouTube, go for it. Probably don't want to if you're squeamish.
It's pretty bad, guys. I actually did a little bit of my own research and saw the video, and it's pretty bad.
Yeah, so. And so it happened. I'm laying there on the ground, and I kind of look down at my foot, and it's facing about a 45-degree angle out, and my other foot is straight up. And I'm like, that doesn't look right. Like there's something wrong here, as you can imagine. And I looked at it, and I started kind of saying out loud. I wasn't screaming. I was saying out loud. I was like, somebody pop it in. Like, just pop it in. Somebody pop it in or whatever. And as I'm saying that, I could hear people in the background like, oh, my gosh. Like, bro, I think I'm going to throw up. Like, just all this kind of, like, funny comments kind of going on. And
I don't know if you've ever told me that before.
Yeah. And,
hilarious.
And
You
so,
guys are, like, throwing up on
big
the field.
football guys.
Yeah, and so my center at the time, so Kyle Fuller, he comes over because he's just one of those guys that, like, he's always going to help you up. Yeah. And he comes over. I'm like, bro, pop it in. And he kind of, like, reached down to look and see what was actually going on. And he probably got about 2 feet from my foot and saw it and was like, I'm not qualified for that, or something funny of that nature. And then that's whenever kind of our medical staff kind of came. I don't know who. I think it was Dr. I don't remember. Staff. Somebody came like sliding in and like grabbed my leg or whatever. They were like, lay down. I was like, just pop it in. I was just lay down. I was like, just pop it in. And so they like recessed it and then popped it back into place. I mean, there wasn't. I guess it was dislocated also.
And at no point you pass out.
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, because it's just adrenaline. Yeah.
I would have like passed out immediately.
Yeah.
That's just me.
It felt like a really bad twisted ankle, and if you watch it, you'll understand what I'm saying. It's a really bad twisted ankle. And so I get carted off. Once I get on the cart, like the whole, the OU stadium just kind of like just starts like an uproar, like clapping and cheering or whatever, just kind of like, I guess, out of respect or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I remember, going under the stadium, getting x-rays. And but before all that, as I was getting carted off the field, I was like, I'll be back out. We'll just tape it up. I'll be back out. And
the trainer's like, no, Seth.
Yeah, and the doctors were like, probably not. But they weren't telling me that because you couldn't really hear anything at the time. And, of course, you get x-rays, and it's completely broken. And then it starts that next process of what's next. Obviously surgery. What after that? Is is the NFL even an opportunity? You know, in my mind, I'm like, I want to come back from this. Like, there's nothing's going to stop me, whatever. And so we just kind of got to that point, and we just kind of moved on and saw what was happening next after the surgery and rehab.
So while you're going through all this stuff, right, are you getting interviewed? Are you getting watched by, you know, your potential scouts for the NFL? I mean, like, what's going on behind the scenes and in front of the scenes while you're going through all this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So NFL, we weren't really allowed to speak to the scouts. It was more of kind of our coaches we'd get packets and stuff from them and whatnot, but more of my focus was on getting my ankle back. I didn't really care about, because that wasn't going to be something unless I got my ankle back. And I knew a lot of the hype had really fallen off from my name or whatever and being in the next level. And that was kind of like a punch to the gut, sort of like you work this hard and you get one injury and they just completely like get off of you type of deal. But I understand that that league is business, is very lucrative. Like there's always the next guy in line type of thing. And but I guess what was the toughest part out of all of it was going through rehab and thinking, okay, it's been 6 weeks. I still don't really have any progress. It's been 8 weeks, still very little progress. 10 weeks, very little progress. And by that time, by once the bone had completely healed, and I was into the therapy side, physical therapy, things weren't adding up timeline-wise, because we had the NFL Combine that was coming up that I was invited to, that I accepted, because it was just you only get one opportunity at that.
Right.
And while that time, I think that was 12 weeks out from my actual injury. And so I'm training, trying to get back. The ankle is just not responding. I had severe nerve damage. I mean, I went through all like the nerve tests and everything. Like, just things were not responding. And I still have nerve damage to this day. But at that point, I was like, I just kept pushing through it. Like, I was in constant pain. It was just something that, like, it was just pain. Like, I've been through worse. Kept pushing myself because I knew what I wanted to get to, you know, and be that guy that broke his neck his junior year, broke his ankle his senior year, and was still able to get drafted or possibly play in the NFL. And that was just kind of kept my mindset and how I kept pushing myself. But, you know, got to the combine, did awful because I couldn't move. It was really bad. I think that kind of hurt my stock a little bit as well. And then I ended up not running at my pro day, which looking back, I probably should have just tried, because I probably would have ran faster than 90% of the other quarterbacks that were in that draft that year.
Yeah.
But it all, in hindsight, you know, wishing I would have done something else. But, I mean, threw the ball great in the combine. I mean, it was probably the best I could have done at that time. And I just felt like with the draft coming up, I was going to have an opportunity moving forward.
So what were you thinking when I'm sure you guys are talking the entire time, right? Like, you're giving her feedback on how it's going at the combine. What's going through your mind when he's telling you all of, like, his performance while he's there?
I mean, I feel like he was always hard on himself. Like, I feel like that wasn't, like, a new thing. Like, I think he could have scored 6 touchdowns in a game and him say, oh, I could have gotten one more kind of thing. So I feel like I never truly, I don't know, like, I'm not, like, this extremely knowledgeable football girlfriend or anything like that. I know the basics. I know what's good. I know what's bad. But I don't know that, like, oh, that there was a bad one compared to this one. I'm like, well, it still got through the receiver, so who cares?
Like, I'm a football person.
I mean, I'm a football person when Seth is playing, but when Seth's not playing, I don't find it that interesting, to be completely honest. But I feel like I just took it as, like, it was another game, and Seth's just being hard on himself. I didn't necessarily think he did bad or he did good. I feel like I probably asked my dad, and, he said, oh, well, I mean, he could have done better, but my dad's going to always be nice. He's not going to tell me something that's going to make me sad, because I was excited for Seth. I mean, I think it's cool. Not everyone's invited to the NFL Combine. Like, that's just an awesome experience in itself. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think I really thought much into it. I knew he wasn't 100%, but I feel who could be after getting that traumatic injury months prior. So I think we'd always thought that, you know, the NFL was still a chance because he'd done so well in the past. Even if it was like a late round or if it was get picked up at a mini camp or something like that, I feel like we just always had that hope and that, you know, I wanted that for him too. The only player in the world with these two major injuries that still made it happen. So I feel like if he had had a couple more months to continue to rehab, he could have competed with those guys still.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, sometimes it's all about timing, right? And had you had more time, probably I wouldn't be sitting here with you guys right now.
That's right.
Know? So
Maybe.
Who knows? Maybe in the future you might want to go back and retry again.
Yeah,
I mean, Brett Favre went back into the NFL after many, many years, so you never know, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things I thought was interesting that you put down on like the little bit of, you know, some info that you gave me beforehand was that you were able to be a lot more present during Seth's injuries because you weren't able to travel while you were rehabbing your knee. Do you feel like, I mean, obviously it sounds like that was a positive thing for you, but as far as your personal career in sports, do you feel like that was something that you missed out on just personally, or?
I mean, yes and no. I feel like I knew I didn't want to play professional soccer, and to be completely honest, I don't think I had the potential to play professional soccer, so it didn't like weigh on me negatively in that way. But I feel like, I don't know. I mean, it was just a fun experience. Like, I loved being able to go to the football games, and I loved being able to be present, you know, during his injury and not necessarily being gone every single weekend since we did both have fall sports. To a certain degree, I do kind of regret focusing more on Seth versus like my teammates in soccer. And I think that's something that I was able to tell them like my senior year at the end. Like, gosh, I wish I wasn't so, you know, preoccupied in Seth and that I was more present with y'all, because it's important to have your boyfriend, because obviously potentially you could be your husband, but it's also important to have your girlfriends, right? And I feel like I kind of missed out on that a little bit. But at the end of the day, I mean, I can't go back. So it's just being intentional about your relationships with your friends now and not putting all of your, you know, time into your significant other. Like, yes, they should have a good majority of your time, but you still also need to be present in other areas of your life. So I feel like, yes, it was good because he needed me during that time. I mean, it's not, a guy doesn't have many people in his life that I feel like they can completely open up to, and I feel like I was able to be that for Seth. But the negative to it was that I kind of missed out on other relationships that I probably should have been working harder to keep while I was in college.
What do you think about that?
I mean, I respect it. I mean, I definitely needed her through a lot of it, and you know, there were some times that, you know, her being around was annoying. But not in a bad way.
I'm annoying.
Not in a bad way. Not in a bad way, but
Right.
just more of like kind of like in a lot of those moments where, because like I don't say I'm like a deep thinker, but I like to think, you know, long term, you know, down the road, you know, and so, you know, talking, you know, with her just about kind of present day things or, you know, future aspirations or whatever. Sometimes it was like I didn't want to talk about that right now. I just kind of wanted to focus on myself and kind of get back to the point, because like I knew she was still always going to be there. But I mean, I definitely needed it. I mean, I'm not going to say I didn't, because I did, because I was in some dark times, you know, just emotionally and, you know, behind closed doors. But whenever it kind of all came to fruition, you know, got back to it all, I mean, I was definitely, I mean, I'm not going to say I didn't want it. I mean, I definitely needed the attention, and, you know, I'm very blessed to have somebody that, you know, would basically put her relationships behind just for one. You know, who even knows if if it would be all for none, type of deal, or all for whatever. But it ended up being, it continued to grow our relationship, our trust in one another, and those are times she's never going to get back, and I highly respect her for that, and I always want to, she's my queen, and so I want to make sure that she's happy and everything.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Never forget it.
Make sure that she's happy, and because she sacrificed a lot, and I feel like our relationship is definitely sacrificing one thing for another to just to move on in life and to grow closer together, and she was able to do that for me at that time.
Wow, that's very sweet. I love that answer. So at what point do you look at each other and you're like, this is it, this is the person I want to marry? Obviously, she's been flying up to Virginia to see you and doing all these things, but at what point do you look at her, and for you too, do you look at Seth and you're like, this is my future, this is who I want to be with for the rest of my life? Like, what was that for each one of you?
I feel like it was pretty early on for me, like within the first few months. I know that sounds cheesy, but I think if you ask anyone that went to Baylor with us, Seth and I were obsessed with each other forever, and we still are obsessed with each other.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not bad.
No, it's cute.
But like, we were just always together, and I think everybody knew that Seth and I were going to get married at the beginning. Like, we just had so much fun together, and we still have fun. So that's my answer. What's your answer?
Yeah, you kind of stole my thunder. But like with me, my mindset of going into a relationship was, is this somebody I can marry? Like, I didn't date through high school. I just never really found anybody that I wanted to date or whatever. But end up, getting to college and having somebody that was like, I think I could make, this will work. This will definitely work. As we kind of kept hanging out, and the first night that we really actually, kind of got to know each other we were at one of our friends' house, and it's a funny story because she said she doesn't play video games, and I'm kind of skeptical of it. So, I'm in there with some of my other guys on the team at their house, and we're playing, I think, FIFA or something like that. And she comes in, whatever, and she comes with some other friends. She comes, sits right next to me, and we're kind of chatting a little bit while playing. I was like, hey, and I offered her, I was like, hey, do you want to play a little bit? She was like, I don't know how to, whatever. And like, I've been playing for probably like a couple of games, and I maybe scored one goal like the whole time. And I hand it to her within 30 seconds to a minute. She scores a goal. I'm like, what? She hustled me a little bit. And I think from that moment on, being able to kind of hang out a little more that night. We went outside and threw the football in the pitch black. Like, I don't know why we did that, but we did it anyways. And we were able to just kind of sit down and talk with each other and just share, like, what our aspirations were, what are some things that we regretted in high school, and, just really deep talking, even with we had just met, basically.
Literally like that day.
Yeah, and so I think that was a good sign moving forward of we were able to share, kind of have that connection early on, to be able to kind of trust one another to share those types of, I guess, emotions and feelings and experiences. That was definitely a positive for our relationship.
I feel like we were able to, you always talk about things in a relationship, whether it be in the beginning and the end, too late, too soon, whatever, I don't know. But, you talk about things that you wish you had done differently, things that are always just lingering in your brain, right? Like those regrets that you had. And I feel like that first night we were able to talk about things like that, which to me, it's kind of just like a sigh of relief. Like, this guy still likes me. He knows, all my dirty baggage. This is great. Because we all carry some. I think that was telling of our relationship a lot, too, that he still Facebook messaged me the next day, because that's, the thing we did back then, to give me his number.
But it's not that far.
It was, 6 years ago? Still. Now it's, Instagram, so it was Facebook then. But knowing that he was still interested in me and interested in pursuing me despite something that, I don't know, just past experiences that I thought he would be oh, no way, turn his head away kind of thing. So that was nice.
What advice would you guys give a brand new couple. I mean, you guys have only been married for what, 2-3 years now?
It's about to
Going
be
on 2.
two.
About to be 2 years. So, what advice would you give a brand new newlywed? And then, what do you think continues to keep you guys strong in your union right now?
I think from the guy's standpoint, the cliche of the woman's always right or the lady's always right, which in aspects they are.
We're always right.
Sometimes. But it's also good to have a good balance. Of like going back earlier talking about sacrifices, like who somebody's going to have to sacrifice something, whether that's moving to a different city or changing jobs or starting a family. Who's going to be the stay at home? Just all those types of conversations that need to be had at the right times. But definitely being able to be upfront, be very I guess real with each other, transparent, so that each person has an expectation of the other. So it's not somebody's holding something back that they really are wanting to do, and they wait till they're a year married, and then it's like they blow up, and then then you have to put the pieces back together. We're able to continue to have a positive relationship with both, talking to one another, being able to share conversation, deep conversation, with real life scenarios. And I think that's something, with being a newlywed, I mean, I can still consider ourselves a newlywed, just still having those conversations and really supporting one another with, so like if she wants to go and, be an all-star model, which I think she could.
I mean,
why not?
I mean, I would support her 100%. And if I wanted to go back and, I don't know, go back to school or something, which I think that's what I'm trying to do, and she supports me 100%. And so I feel like it's more of a sacrifice, but also a supportive, but also give positive and reconstructive criticism back. So like, okay, if you are going to do this, how are you going to do it? Are you going to, and just talk those out and really kind of have a blueprint of what you can possibly do, and then figure out how to put the pieces together.
I think I agree with him 100%. I think what we have been dealt with the majority of our first few years of marriage is just how everything's changing, right? Like, you're used to being so sheltered, getting, your parents to support you if you're so fortunate for them to do that for you. And just, I don't know, life is always changing, especially like when you're in your early 20s, and especially when you have someone else that has to be agreeable to your decisions too, and be willing to support you in them and willing to make some changes even if they don't necessarily want to. Just knowing that at the end of the day, you have to support each other. You have to make sacrifices as is appropriate, but also be that advocate and that person who is weighing the pros and cons with them. Just, I don't know how to put it into words. I mean, it's communication. You just have to talk so much. And I agree with what you said. If you keep things in, you don't talk about things, they're going to eventually come out, and rather sooner than later, because if it's later, you could have missed out on something big, and you just don't want to live with regrets or saying like, you held me from doing this kind of thing. Like, we've talked that we don't want to hold resentment to one another. And I think that just comes with being a young married couple, especially. So I'm sure that's true of couples who get married later on as well. But I feel like, especially for young married couples, just making sure that y'all have that open line of communication. It's always discussed, because I know that's something we want to ensure doesn't happen in the future, that we resent each other because we decided to join in union much earlier than is quote-unquote typical.
Well, it seems like you guys have whatever it is that's works really well. I think what's interesting about this is why I wanted to interview you guys is because I didn't know your story at all about your injuries or anything at all, other than just like watching your relationship at the gym, which if you guys were to come to the gym with us, they both still like go 100% beast mode at the gym. So you would never think that either one of them went through anything. Like, you think that they were perfectly fine, and then you find out this story. I think that's also a testament to your marriage and your relationship, is you guys are very strong on the inside and the out, and it's something that I really I really enjoy about both of you guys. So I do have a really interesting question. So both of you guys are college athletes, right? Your career is now, you have more of a professional career now. But knowing everything that you've gone through in sports, your ups and downs through injury and everything, would you allow your children to, invest their personal career and future in sports and athletics?
Yes, 100%.
Absolutely.
Yes. Although you want to protect your kid from getting hurt, they're going to get hurt in some aspect of their life, whether it be they're a band player, whether they're a sport player, whether they're an artist, right? There's always going to be something that hurts them. And I know it's different because you're thinking like, well, they're physically going to get hurt. But I think I learned so much about myself and about just the relationships that can be created when it comes to sports. And that's something I would never want to deprive my children of. I don't know how I feel about like having a daughter and having her play soccer just because women are more prone to getting hurt in that sport. I haven't fully thought that one out yet, but I'm also not going to be the mom who's like, no, you can't play soccer. Like if we have a daughter, which that's like, we're not having girls, like we're only having boys because he thinks that's what's going to happen.
Russell gene.
Whatever.
Well, you can kind of do that nowadays. So
Yeah.
Pick your flavor, girl or boy.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, I think I'll let my kids do whatever they want to do from a sport perspective, but obviously just knowing what I know as being a dietitian, how nutrition is important, how making sure, you're getting proper rest, because all those things play a role in injuries. And I think back to my injuries, I'm like, could I have maybe prevented that by taking care of my body better and things like that? Mm-hmm. So I feel like I'll be willing to whatever they want to do.
I'm going to let them play everything they want to play. I mean, with me growing up, with my three brothers, we played every sport possible. I think, it teaches you how to be a team player, first off. And then secondly, like if you're in sports, if you're constantly, I guess, busy with something, you're not going to get distracted with something else. Like you're going to grow your mentality of, at least that's the way I was always kind of taught and learned as I went. Like if you have something to work for, then you're not going to let the other kind of smaller things get in the way. So like say like if you have a kid that just sits at home and doesn't do anything, and they get bored and they want to go out, they're probably more susceptible to getting into those negative, like drugs or theft, all those types of things that are not positive in influencing a kid. But for me, I feel like sports was always kind of like not a buffer, but it kept me away from all of the other negative things that could have possibly happened, even though injury was always something that people were always worried about. But if you take care of yourself, if you push yourself to the limit, I mean, you're going to get hurt. That's just the name of the game. If you want to be the best, unfortunately, you're going to break your body down. And even though with, having, we're going to have boys, I've already prayed it. Like, that's just what it is.
Like I'm praying it into existence.
And I'm going to be supportive of whatever they want to do. I'm going to force them to be left-handed because I feel like left-handed people are more likely to go to the profession. I'm just joking.
Oh, it's like we're forcing them to be left-handed. They're going to be left-handed boys that are going into the NFL.
Yeah, no, but
I agree with you though. But it doesn't necessarily, like what he said though, we'll be supportive of whatever they want to do if they don't want to play sports, like getting them involved in something else. Like I don't feel like that is something that would matter to us. Yeah, it would sting a little bit. We joke about this all the time. We're like, we're gonna have the greatest athletic children. Like they have the best genes. Like if we have a kid who is like, Mom, I want to paint. I don't want to play sports, but he's like built to be an athlete. Like, yeah, that's gonna weigh on you a little bit. We always joke about that, but
a 6 foot tall flute player.
I know it. Like that just doesn't match up. So that's our stance. Sports for the Russell fam.
It's a positive.
Yeah, definitely. So, any final words? Anything that you guys have on your mind that you wanted to say? Anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
I think, with whoever, if you're going through a tough time, just know that I mean, it's the most cliche thing to say, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I know I've had, several friends that have gone through, much worse times than I have, with losing family or whatnot, and, them deciding to do something that they probably wouldn't have done if they were in their right mind. But just knowing that, there are systems out there, there's people out there that want to listen, or even if you're going through a dark time, just go and find somebody, like, go to a church, go to a pastor. I mean, anybody that is willing to listen, sit down and just talk about it. Because if you keep it in, like, it'll just keep eating away at you. Like, I know with my situation with my neck, like, that was probably, like I said, the deepest and darkest time I've ever been in my entire life. And I never want to go back there because I never really talked about it. And anytime I would, like, I couldn't get through the first sentence because I just started bawling. And so being able to have somebody there, like Ashleigh was, to be able to kind of be that rock to stand on, somebody has at least one person out there, I feel like. And if you don't, like, go find a pastor or go find somebody that, is very spiritual. I feel like with me, I know that was always a positive because it's somebody that will sit down and listen to you. Or even if they're not spiritual, maybe a counselor or anybody that will listen. And to kind of put things out there to let people know kind of what's going on in your life so that they can possibly influence you or help you make a better decision in your life.
I agree with that. I think looking back at it now, I mean, what he's talking about, like getting help when you need help, I feel like that's not something we necessarily did ourselves, but in hindsight is probably something we should have done. Like, why didn't you go see like a therapist, or why didn't you go see someone to talk to? Because I feel like your close family and friends kind of like carry the weight of feeling like they need to fix you. And maybe that's why it was annoying, because it was like, how are you feeling? Like, are you okay? Like, do you want to talk about it? And so that's probably why I was so annoying, because I was trying to talk about it all the time because he's keeping everything in. But in retrospect, we probably just should have gotten you set up with something like that, which is probably something they should do more so in college athletics, rather than just thinking, I mean, not just in college athletics, but that's something that I don't think was ever offered to me. It may have. I may have just said no because I'm stubborn and you feel like I'm fine. But thinking of like how dark of places you can go to when you go through such hard experiences. I don't know, maybe it's something in the future, like we're bound to go through something dark again. Like maybe it's something we think of before we just kind of hold everything in.
Thank you guys. That was awesome. I really appreciate you guys spending your time here. And, I am a huge proponent of finding somebody to talk to, especially going through dark times. I've been through myself. And one of the things that did bring me out of that was going to speak to a therapist. I had a therapist for about 3 to 4 years and, learned completely different coping mechanisms as opposed to just keeping it all in. I think now I'm more open to like having a conversation or talking about whatever difficulty I'm going through, because it helps me get past it a little bit faster versus just keeping it in bottled up, because eventually it does kind of blow up in your face without you expecting it. You're not knowing why you're crying at like a leaf falling and you're like, what is going on? But obviously I'm trying to make light of it, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. Going to find some help, finding someone to speak to, whether a pastor, a therapist, or a friend, or somebody who is in a good space to be able to give you that space you need, like just a very protective ability to give you that free space is definitely something I agree with you guys on. So, well, thank you so much for coming. And, if you guys have any questions or if you'd like to reach out to Ashleigh or Seth, you guys can check them out on their Instagram.
That's right.
If you guys want to share your Instagram handles, you're more than welcome to.
I think mine's private, but maybe I'll make it not private. It's just Ashleigh J. Russell.
I don't even know what mine is.
ASHLEIGH.
I think mine's like Seth Russell 17, I think.
Okay. Original.
Yeah, it's
was that
Seth
number?
Russell 17.
Okay.
2 L's.
Cool.
2 L's.
All right.
So that's my Instagram.
Cool. Well, y'all have a great night, and thank you again for everything.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Thanks again for joining me for another episode of Empowerment and All That. For daily inspirational messages, follow me on Instagram at Rita, RITA_Bautista, BAUTISTA 1111, or you can follow Empowerment and All That on Instagram and on Facebook. And remember, keep it positive or don't keep it at all.